Well, how y'all doing? All right, good. I said y'all. Yeah, I spent some time in Texas. There it is. My wife is Texan. My name is Eric Johnson. I am a principal developer advocate for serverless. And yes, you're right. Most times when I'm up on stage, I'm talking about step functions. I'm talking about Lambda functions. I'm talking about, I could go through the list. But today, we're not going to do that. Today's going to be a little bit different. In fact, for the next 30 minutes, I don't work for AWS. I'm just me, okay? After the 30 minutes, if you have questions, hallway track me. I'll answer anything. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, or I'll tell you I don't know. I'm okay with that. But today, we're going to kind of get into something different, kind of a passion for me, and talk about how do you think of things? How do you attack challenges? How do you deal with challenges? Now, before we jump in, there are a couple of rules when I'm speaking. Has anybody ever heard me speak before? Okay, good. Brand new room. Couple of you raise your hands. Here's the rules. For if you've never heard me speak, this will help you. And rules is probably kind of a strong thing, but it helps you understand. So rule number 1 is, this is any number I want it to be. Okay, I'm going to hold this up, and I may say 7, I may say 14. And I do that because it never fails. I go into a restaurant, they say, how many? I say, table for 7, please. And I'm by myself at the bar. So, second rule is, these are quotes, not apostrophes. And I know that, okay? Because this looks better than this. Because people are like, is he doing a bunny? I'm not doing a bunny. Unless I am. It's contextual, right? So, and the last thing is, these are thumbs, okay? I do this, I stick my thumbs up because this will get you beat up. So, you learn as you go through life, right? So these are things. Now, a couple things, just so you know, I was born this way. I didn't wake up this way. I did wake up this way this morning, but not for the first time, all right? So throughout this next 30 minutes, you're going to hear, some one-figure jokes. You're going to hear, all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm very comfortable with that. But if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm also comfortable with that. So, in case you were worried, I'm good. So, thank you. All right. I looked down and my clock says I have 12 seconds, so we're going to go fast. So, all right, no, I think they're resetting it. So, all right, so a couple of things I want to tell you. Now, let me ask you a question. And raise your hand and be honest. How many of y'all remember your first date? Okay. Wow, that's kind of scary. Let me change the question for this crowd. I know I'm in a tech room. How many of y'all are waiting for your first date? Okay. I'm going to tell you about my first date. Now, this was in high school, and this is going to shock you, I was much skinnier in high school, right? Much skinnier. I scared my kids to death. Oh, I used to be skinny. Oh my gosh, I have 5 kids, by the way. How many? Okay. There's somebody that didn't hear the rules going, that's a 1. Okay, so I have 5 kids, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so my first date was in high school, and I was in love with this girl, because obviously I was in high school, I knew exactly what love was. And I was in love with her, and so I was going to call and ask her out, so I called her house, and her mom answered, and I hung up, because, it's hard. So we went through this a couple times, and finally, we talk, and I said, and I won't say her name in case you ever see her, she doesn't need to know I'm telling the story, so, is so-and-so there? And so we talk, and I said, I'd like to take you out on a date. So her parents insisted that I come to the house first. Now, as a dad of 5, I think this is fantastic. You want to meet the people your kids are going out with, right? But as a high school student, I was terrified, right? I was like, okay, this is what we got to do. So our first date was going to be, I'd go have dinner with her family, and then her mom and dad were still going to college, so we would go to college with them, use the library when they were in there, and come back. This is great because I'm a son of a teacher and a music minister. We didn't have any money, so I'm like, yeah, you want to feed us? That's great. So I go over to the house, I show up, we go in, we're having dinner, we're having beans and franks, and I remember it like it was yesterday, okay? And so we're sitting around the table, and I've drank all my lemonade, and I asked for more lemonade. I say, hey, excuse me, can I have some more lemonade? Now, how many of y'all remember Tupperware? Okay, all right, so you say remember, it's not dead, it's still around. But back in the day, okay, if you remember, they had this liquid jug, and every time I tell a story, it gets bigger, but it was like this wide, and it was this tall, and it was filled to the brim with lemonade, right? And so they said that, they handed it to me. Now, here's where I kind of like, oh, you want me to pour it? Have you seen me? Okay, I'll pour it. So I take it, and I pour that lemonade into my cup, and that lid didn't even try, okay? The lemonade, like a slow motion, goes to the back, goes to the front, and the lid, literally, I heard it scream and jump out of the way. And lemonade went all over the table. And I'm like, oh my gosh. This had nothing to do with my hands. I'm just clumsy, all right? That's how it works. But this is kind of interesting. If you're different in any way, you'll know about this. Now, I got 2 looks, okay? The first look I got was from the dad, and it was, you're not good enough for my daughter. In fact, you're an idiot. And he was right. I mean, come on, I have daughters, so he's right. Okay, but the second look is the one I get. If you're different, you see this, and it's the look that has no words, but I hear in my head, that's the saddest thing I've ever seen. Look at him, that's so sad. And that's what the mom was looking at me like that. All right, so there it is. We've had our first date. This is our first incident on the date. Everything else should go great, right? So we get in the car. We go to the library. Mom and Dad go to school. We're in class. We're in the library itself. They're in class. Then they come out, and the dad gets out first. The mom's still in class, and he says, "I'm going to take you and get some ice cream." Now, this is Phoenix, Arizona. There's a place called Mary Coyle's Ice Cream. It's very good ice cream. It's down by Phoenix College. So we're going to go. Now, here's the story. Now, something you need to understand about me. So pause for a minute. My feet are just like my hands. Okay? No, I don't have fingers on my feet because that would be weird. But I have one toe on each foot. Okay? Now, how that affects me is my balance is horrible. If you watch me, I never stand still. It's constant. I actually warned the camera person before I said I'm going to walk around a lot. I will fall down if I don't. I just have bad balance. And that especially affects me if I'm running. I have to slow down before I stop. That's important to the story. So we're going, and she's got her arm in mine because, it's first date. So we're walking, and my strut wasn't any better then than it is now, but we're strutting, and we get to the street, and we've got to cross to the median, okay? And there are cars going this way, but none going this way. Okay, I just told this story in London a while back, and I had to explain to them. The whole thing was kind of confusing. But anyway, we had to run to the median and stop before cars came. So her arm still in mine, we ran to the median. And I had no room to slow down. So all I could do was stop. And this is where I learned the transfer of energy. You feel it, you hear it. I threw her in front of an oncoming car. Laid her out flat, and cars locking up. The dad's yelling horrible things. And I'm literally standing and go, look, I'm standing. So I help her get up. We didn't get the ice cream. We went back to the car. We got in the car. The mom comes out. The dad's explaining. I sat behind the dad so he couldn't reach me. And the dad's explaining to the mom, and the mom literally looks at me and goes, that's the saddest thing I've ever seen. She didn't say the words, but I could hear it. So finally, I figure, okay, it cannot get worse, right? It cannot get worse. This is, this is as bad as it gets. So we go home, and we get back to the house, and my truck is sitting in front of the house, and the house is on a major street. It's on a little service road on a major street. Now, back at this time, this was in 1986. My dad had a 1976 Ford F-250. It was Mountain Dew green. Okay? Yes, shocking. I was single, right? And this is what I drove. And this was his midlife crisis truck. It could almost pull the front tires off the ground. It had a 390 in it. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds big, right? So it was big and loud. So let me just tell you what happened, and this will make sense. We get in the car, and I'm leaving. The whole family's out front. She's standing there. It's mom, dad, brother, sister. They're all standing in the front yard watching me leave. And I get in the truck, and I start my turn, and I realize it's dark, and I don't have my lights on. I've got to turn onto the major road like this. I'm like, oh, idiot, you don't have your lights on. So I crank the wheel. I've got the wheel cranked all the way this way with my left hand. Because it's kind of cool because I just put my finger in there and I turn like that. How cool does that look, right? Yeah. So I've got it cranked all this way. Now, in a 1976 Ford F-250, the light switch is a big knob on the left side of the steering wheel, and you have to pull it out. So I've got the wheel cranked all the way this way. I'm already holding it, so what could I do? I reach for the light switch like this. Now, if you notice that finger, that's a big old fat thing. I got under there and I pulled it, my finger got stuck. And in pure fear, I punched it. Bah! All the way. And that truck went out, around onto the main street, over the median, through their yard, and back out on the street. The dad's backing him up. And I drove the whole way home like this, in tears. I get home. I'm like, oh my gosh. I go in and I tell my dad. My dad was a teacher at the school. In fact, he had the girl on his basketball team and in class. And I told my dad, I said, first, I threw lemonade all over the table. Then I threw her in front of an oncoming. I risked her life. And then I drove through their yard, and my dad was crying because he was laughing so hard. And so my mom came and consoled me. My mom was the more sensitive one, right? Came and consoled me. But it was that night. It's kind of interesting. It's that night that I realized I was different. Now, you're like, really? That's the first night? No, that wasn't the first night. But that night I sat down and I really kind of understood, man, there's challenges we deal with and sometimes we can't help. And this is the same for all of us. So here's the first thing I would have you go away with this morning. I know you're taking notes, so write this down. Okay. The first thing I would tell you is we are all challenged. Now mine, you may look at me and go, wow, this is not my biggest challenge. This is probably the smallest of my challenges. My challenges are much bigger and on a list that my wife keeps in her purse. Okay, I have plenty of problems, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But this is the most visible challenge that people see, right? And it does cause some issues. It does cause some things. But here's the second thing. This is number 2, right? I'll give you that one. I can actually get to 4, but I have to take my shoes off, and it gets really weird for everybody. Okay, so I'll do 2 for you. So number 2 is how you deal with the challenge is the model by which everybody else will deal with that challenge. Now, this doesn't just apply in personal life. This applies in our business life. You managers out there, how you deal with the challenge, how you look at it is how your team is going to deal with that challenge, right? You're kind of the model, right? Okay, yeah, you're good. You think we can handle this? I'm good. I think we can handle this, right? So they look at that. So it's important that when we do that, we don't just go, can't be done. Now, I told you I'd talk about my kids. Just to give you a little history. My mom is the first one to be this way. Okay? Not in the world, I don't think, but in the first our family, right? There's other parents. It's very rare. The name of it, if you want to know, is called ectodactyly. In fact, it's called monodactyly. It's part of the ectodactyly family. And when I saw the doctor, he said I have severe monodactyly, which means, you ready? Really bad one finger. I'm like, oh, okay. There could be worse. There could be more. I mean, you don't get less than this, right? So I have monodactyly, right? So, and that's okay. But how I deal with that is how you're going to deal with that. Now, it's the stories I'm telling. But one thing to understand is that you spend a little time with me and you quickly forget I'm this way. So my mom, my brother's this way. 4 of my 5 kids are just like me. I'm going to tell you about them because they've seen me kind of model this in their life. They've seen how I do it. They've seen how I approach life. They know I do what I do. They know I'm technical. I'm actually, my original degree, I was a drummer, believe it or not. And I know some of you are like, really? Yes, I was a drummer. I played drums. I played in college. And here's what I learned. Just a quick side on that. Turns out I'm a phenomenal drummer for one finger. But past that, I'm pretty average. And nobody's going to ask me to play. I used to hire out at churches a lot back in Phoenix. Churches would hire me. It was always fun to show up. And you can see them going, oh boy. Because they don't know. I show up, I'm like, hey, oh my goodness. Bless your heart. Which the Southern Baptists are, oh my gosh. Right? And I love I'd go in and I'd take one stick and I'd pick up the stick and I'd go, okay, let's rock. And churches can't say anything. They're like, bless your heart, that's awesome. But really, I use wristbands and I can hold them, and it's a whole different story. I'll tell another time. But nobody's going to pay me to do it. I'm fairly average past the one finger. But the kids have seen this. The kids have seen this model of you can do whatever you want to do. And so watching my kids in modeling that, I can show them, but in reality, and here's kind of a sub point of that is, You have to decide on your own to deal with that. I can tell my kids, you're all right, that's perfect, you were made that way, everything's great. But they have to adopt that for themselves. And that's how they become the model of how other people will treat them. And it's the same thing for y'all. As you're dealing with challenges, where is it in your head? Is it defeating, or is it just something you deal with, right? A big statement in our house is, it is what it is. It's not what it should be. It's not what we want it to be. It's not what it was. It is what it is. And so we deal with what is, and we deal with it head on. My oldest child, I remember he was about 5 years old. Well, let me explain the background to this. One of the jokes, people ask me about my hands all the time, and depending on the mood I'm in, that's the way I was made, or that's the way, whatever, and stuff like that. Or they're at home in a box in a freezer. And that's always fun to say because nobody argues with that. Nobody's gone, nah, no, they're not. Most people just go, oh, okay. You have a good day, right? So, my son, number one here, I 5 kids, I don't remember their names, so they're 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, number one, we're young, and he's probably about 5 years old, and we're driving down the road. It's just he and number 2, they're sitting there. Number 2, that's his name. So he doesn't like it, but sometimes he is number 2. So we're driving down the road, and he's finally clicked. I'm different. And he says, Dad, where are my fingers? Well, folks, it's muscle memory. You don't even think about it. Oh, they're at home in a box in a freezer. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. And you can see, I look in the rearview mirror while I'm driving, and you see the wheels turning. Could I have him back? No, your mom said no. So we pulled over, we had the talk. This is why, this is life, this is what is, a lot of things I'm telling you. So it's a couple of years later, we're in a McDonald's, we're playing around, and he says, he's playing with this little boy, we're over eating, and they're playing for like 20 minutes, and everything's great, and all of a sudden this little boy is in the corner crying his heart out, right? So I went and said, Noah, what happened? He said, well, he asked me where my fingers were. What'd you say? I said, they're at home in a box in the freezer with my dad's. Good job, Noah. And then I had to go, and I went over and talked to the dad, and he's like, what? And he gave me the look. You ready? It was like, this is the saddest thing I've ever seen. Sad. But Noah has decided he's going to be all right. Now, it's not every day. It's not, I don't get on my knees and thank God that I'm this way. I'm going to be real honest. It is a daily choice to say, it is what it is. And there are some days where you wish it wasn't. My number 2 son, that's going to stick with me now. I've never thought that out, but so my number 2 son, he's weird. If he were standing right here, he'd tell you, yeah, I'm weird. He's about 6'2" and about 220 pounds, so I don't say it to his face. He could take me any moment. He's a great kid. He's studying business at ASU. He's a good kid. But I remember the day where we kind of went, Jake's going to be okay. We were out trick-or-treating. This is in Colorado, so you never know what the weather's going to be like. Could be hot, could be cold, could be whatever. So we're out, and we get to the last house, and it's the very last house. We're exhausted. We're walking up, and this last house has a sidewalk going up the side, and it's got a big plate glass window in the door. And you can see as I'm going, there's these little girls. This house is like a fantasy house. It was all decorated. It was pretty. It had these 2 little girls. They were like 5 years old. They were twins. They were fairies for Halloween. They had the wings on, and they were dancing to the door. We'll get it, Mom. It's just like a little fantasy, beautiful place, And so the girls get to the door, and I do not know what possessed my child. But right when they get to the door, he looks in the door and he goes, I got 2 fingers! Right in the glass. Let me tell you, the dream was over. The girls are screaming. The dad comes running out. The mom's running out. The girls are screaming in hysterics like we're trying to break in, and Jake's standing in the window. And the mom gave me a look. And you would expect it. That's a sad look. It wasn't that look. It was the what is wrong with your child look. And all I could do was, I too have 2 fingers. You have a good day. We'll be without your candy. And we left. But I remember thinking, Jake's okay. Again, it's not a daily thing. Sometimes it's tough. One of the words we hear all the time is, oh, you're such an inspiration. All right, that's cool. I'm glad to be an inspiration. That's great. Sometimes I just want to be normal, right? There are those days. I'm going to jump to my last child for a moment just for time, but my number 5 is Gracie. Gracie's got, I always get emotional telling this, so bear with me, all right? Gracie's got 1 finger just like I do. Our number 4 does not. She's got the 5 fingers. It's not her fault. Don't blame her, all right? It is what it is. But she's got the 5 fingers, and honestly, she feels like the minority in the house, because she is, right? But my youngest child, I remember we were at a funeral. It was my father-in-law's funeral, and on the way to the funeral, let's tell you a little bit about my wife. She saw a Payless sign, Payless shoes, and they were going out of business sale, and she went, we're going to stop there. I was like, well, we should go to the funeral. No, I don't mean this moment, but we're going to come back there. And we did, and we went back there. We went in there. And of course, for my number 4, because she's got the 5 toes, she's got the regular feet, there were all kinds of shoes. We had stacks and boxes of shoes for her. But my youngest, we couldn't find 1 pair of shoes. And I remember her sitting there, and she crawled up in my lap. She said, Dad, this sucks. And I go, well, it is what it is. But it isn't what we wish it was. This sucks. And she actually said the word, she goes, I don't want to be an inspiration. I just want to be normal. You see, sometimes we have to endure challenges, right? We have to endure those things. And I challenge you with that. Because it is what it is. If we can change it, we change it. But sometimes we can't. And we just love on each other for a while. That's why I just hug her. I go, yeah, it's not fun. It's hard. But it is what it is. And the next day we choose to go, okay, how do we face this challenge head on? So the number 3 point I would tell you, and in our house we're big on it, is no excuses. We don't allow our kids to go, I can't because. We allow them to hurt. We hold them in our laps. We hug on them. We love on them. But then we say, now you go on. Now you step up. Now you face it. Are you doing that with yours? Think about the challenge that you have. Are they beating you, or are you stepping up to it? It's okay to take a day. Take that day, but don't take a year. You step back into it, right? So the third thing, like I said, is we don't allow excuses. Tying shoes in our house is a big deal. That was a tough one. That and potty training, but that had nothing to do with the hands. But we made them learn. You have to learn. Because see, here's the reality. In the workplace, we learned that people aren't going to go, oh, you know what? You can't do it like us. We'll go ahead and pay you the regular amount, stuff like that. We teach, it doesn't work that way. We expect you to be productive, to be doing your job, right? And so we've taught our kids that we don't have handicap stickers. We don't park in handicap spots. I don't have a problem with that, but we don't need it. Okay, the only place I'm ever handicapped, and I allow us to be handicapped, is Customs in London, because that line is long. You stand there and go, we're handicapped. We walk right through, right? I'm not proud of that, but we did it. I remember when I let the kids, I took my boys to London and go, we can be handicapped? 10 minutes, and through we went. But you don't make excuses. I had a teacher, when I was a kid, one of my best friends in high school he's a dwarf, or he was a little person. I think that's what he prefers. And he's 36 inches tall to this day. And we became best buds. And I remember he always finished the assignments before I did. So I said, how did you finish so fast? He goes, well, I told the teacher it hurts my hands, so she only makes me do half the assignment. So I was brand new to school, so I remember coming around, and she came around, and every time she'd come by, I'd go, ooh, wow, wow, ooh. And she said, Eric, does that hurt to write? I said, yeah. She said, how about you do half the assignment? Okay. So for half a semester, or for a semester, half a year, I did half the assignment. And the teacher came and we did that. And my mom, and I learned this as a parent, when you ask a question, parents ask questions, 99% of the time we know the answer before we ask the question, right? My mom says that, really she says, if I'm not there to see it, God tells me. Which I don't believe, but now I believe as a parent. But anyway, she said, Eric, let me ask you a question. Are you doing half the assignment in English? Yes. So why is that? So I explained the whole thing. Man, she tore me a new one. She, up and down, I got chewed out. And then we went to school, and then the teacher got in trouble. And she tore the teacher apart. And then we went to Mark's house. And then she told her mom, or she told his mom, and then they took turns yelling at us. I mean, it was like tag team. Tag, you're in. And then Mark was so mad at me. Why'd you tell? She knew. I don't know how she knew. God told her. We had to do all the assignments. Because in my house, I was raised, you do not use it as an excuse. No excuses. We're big fans of the word yet. I can't tie my shoes. You can't tie them yet. You'll get there. I can't because. You can't because yet. You'll get there. There are some things I will never do. I will never be great at pull-ups, but really, honestly, who wants to do pull-ups? Okay? I'll never be a great sax player. Right? Those two notes. Reality is there are some things I cannot do, but it's very limited, and I won't know until I try. And we make our kids try, and I encourage you with that. Try. Okay? And I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to tell you this. There's one more point I'm going to give you, and that is have fun. In my family, we say have fun. You have to have fun, even with the challenges. In 1984, my brother, who's just like me, he went to SeaWorld with a band. This is a band from Arizona. They drove to SeaWorld. It's about 120 kids. And they've done their competition and stuff, and then they were going to go to SeaWorld for a day. And while they were there, they went into the killer whale petting tank. Thought this would be funny. They went into the killer whale petting tank, and they put ketchup all over the squid you feed the killer whales, and they threw him in the tank, and they put ketchup all over my brother's hands, and he came out screaming. They closed part of SeaWorld for roughly 4 hours until they gathered him up, and they kicked the whole band out. You see, you have to have fun. And I mean, come on, what's funner than shutting down SeaWorld for a couple hours? You can sit and go, am I cursed or am I blessed? I like to go with blessed. I love making the joke, it's not your fault. You have 5 fingers. It's just the way it is. You know, and I make that joke a lot, but the reality is you have to have fun. Because it is what it is, have a lot of fun. If you sit around with our family too long, we laugh, we play, we're morbid. We tell lies. I mean, I have tons of stories. If you want, catch me in the hall and talk to me about getting caught in Turkey, getting put in an interrogation room, being stopped at the border. That was rough. Talk to me about, I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories about being different, but we have fun. So here's my challenge to you. You may be going, Eric, I don't know the challenge you're dealing with. You're right, I don't. But you do. Everybody in here has a challenge. How you deal with it is the model by which other people are going to deal with it. You're being watched all the time. By your team, by your kids, by people around you. How you deal with it is how they're going to deal with it. No excuses. Stop with the excuses. Figure it out. Again, there are few things, but a lot of times we stop long before we've tried everything. And finally, have fun. Man, I hope the rest of this event is great for you. I hope that you have a good time. If you have AWS tech questions, I'll talk about that. I work for AWS again. I'm back. So, and I'm glad to talk about any of that, but I hope you have a great time. Thanks for letting me talk with you. We'll see you later.